Well, howdy there, y'all. Yamahsaki here. Welcome back to Yamahsaki RC. And in today's video, we're going to be starting a new project for the winter. Now, my most recent video upload was on the old AC Model B fuel pump for the Oakland, and that's been an ongoing project for about a year now. Unfortunately, that car is still not mobile. Winter has somewhat arrived, and I can't get it into the shop yet. And after working on my old 4Runner, I wanted to do something smaller, a smaller project. I will have a link down in the description below to the latest video that I've done. But this video, we're going to be starting the restoration process on that old Lauson hit and miss engine from the Dream Machine video that I made a couple months ago. The dang thing's locked up. It's pretty rusty and crusty for being, I don't know, buried under 2.5 feet of mulch and dirt for the past 50 years. I don't really know. But that's what this video is going to be starting. And I'm going to be showing you what I've already somewhat done. So stay tuned, because it's going to be pretty interesting. Okay, so here's where I'm at with this thing. Pretty much what I've been doing is just trying to get things free. Taking one part off at a time. Taking the head off and the wheel off. That's pretty much what I've done. I painted the wheel. It's pretty stiff up there, so I still need to do some work. And I got the head off. And what I really need to do is get the frame separated from the engine. Make it a lot easier, but this thing's freaking heavy. I don't know how heavy it is, but moving it on this stand is tough enough on its own, let alone just on these skids, which are just big old 2x4s. It's heavy. So I gotta work with what I got here for now, and then I'll figure out how to separate the two. Pretty simple. 4 big old bolts going all the way through these big pieces of wood. But everything's locked up, and I've just been taking one piece off at a time. The piston is going to be the biggest problem, but I think it's savable, hopefully. And I'll get to that in a minute. I'll get to the whole mystery of this thing in a minute. But the cylinder and bore, for our over 100 years old, it's not terrible. There's some rust in there, a little bit of ridging, kind of like where the pistons were sitting. I think if I do a good hone on it, I think it should clear right up. These things don't really have compression. So, as long as everything's running free and operating smoothly, this thing should hopefully run. But I've taken the head off, and that's the assembly I've been working on. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And I'll go ahead and grab a flashlight too here in a few and get you a better look at that cylinder. Okay, so here's the head assembly. And it's kind of your carburetor assembly too. I'll explain. But this is what I've been battling over the past couple of days. I got it off and I immediately stuck it in Evapo-Rust. Cleaned it up, torched the piss out of it with the industrial acetylene torch. These things are God savers when you're trying to get things unstuck. If you need to expand metal, oh yeah, the power of the sun will do it for you. But I got it out and then I further disassembled it, and I got all the parts here, and I know that looks ass backwards to some of you, but I'll get to that, don't worry. The three main issues I'm running into right now: the spark plug is really rusted in there, the exhaust valve is really rusted in there, and the exhaust is really rusted in there. So I just took it out of its second Evapo-Rust bath, and that further got a lot of the rust. And hopefully after I heated it the first time, it expanded some of that metal and allowed some of that to get in there. I don't know, we're just hoping here. But I then again torched it a second time, and now I have a mix of 10W40 and Marvel's Mystery Oil in all of the sockets the best I could get them. So hopefully, I don't know when I'll get to it. Probably it's the next step. I got to get all this stuff out. So maybe tomorrow I'll have some luck and get something out. But all the other parts are here, and I have since painted them and done a whole bunch of work. And I know that looks ass backwards to some of you. You're like, why in the hell are you already painting? We don't even have the engine done and taken apart. Well, on some projects, what I've done is take apart and get it finished up. And that gives me a reference point on what the project can hopefully look like once it's fully restored. It just kind of gives me a little bit of motivation. But like this, for example, here's your carburetor or your fuel mixer. It's the first part that I fully took apart, put back together. I still need to find some packing so it doesn't leak fuel from here. But everything's free, nice and clean and painted, ready to roll. Even have the original gasket here for a template. But that would go right here. If this is the front, if you're facing it head on, your carburetor goes down here. And that would explain the fuel right there. This thing goes like this. Sits right there. And there's your air filter, your air intake. That's it for the carburetor. That's the first part that I kind of fully took apart and got reassembled. So carburetor's done for the most part. I mean, that is so simple. Look at that. There's nothing to it. It's a pipe. A pipe with a valve and an open air opening. Isn't that crazy? Ah, hang on. The cat's bothering me. Can I do my video? Can I do my video? Thank you. Anyway, we got the screws here that mount said carburetor. All shined up, ready to go. And what I'm also doing is every time I screw something back in, I put some anti-seize in so it makes it easier and they don't get stuck in the future. Just a nice little tip for any of you interested. But aside from the carburetor, it's onto the valve assembly. Now I got one valve out, the intake valve. Look at how clean that valve is for 100 years old. And I love the designs. You see, you got your rocker sitting right here, and there would be an attachment here, kind of like a fork that held your rocker, and it would have pressed down on your valves here. And the way your valves go is you stick them in, your spring goes on, you put a cap on here, and one of these tiny little pins goes in. Can I get it? Can I get it? Like so. That's your valve assembly. You can take them apart by hand, which is exactly what I did. Just a neat little trinket. Now you'll notice, if I get these pins out of here, which these are the pins for the arm assembly, the rocker arm assembly. Those are the main pins. Went ahead and I sanded them and wire brushed them. But anyway, you'll notice the springs are different. One of them's thicker, a little bit shorter. One of them's longer and a little bit slimmer. I'm going to have to go back in my photos when I put it back together and figure out which one does what, because I'm sure that's important. They did that for a reason. When they built this engine, they weren't fooling around. They were not fooling around. And you see, it's a very basic head. There's nothing to it. Big old piece of cast iron. There's your spark pocket right there. Your guide is built in to the head itself. I mean, solid piece of American iron. Holy smokes. And I'll just go ahead and I'll show you guys. There's the rocker arm. This thing did have a previous repair. At one point in its life, you can see all that. It's not symmetrical and pretty looking on this side. And there's a lot of extra metal there because, it must have snapped or done something to warrant that repair right there. I'm currently painting it red. I'm going to do a red and gray type of two-tone color on the engine. I think it'll look really good. And don't tell nobody, but that's International Harvester red. I know, it's kind of sacrilegious, but damn, it's a good red for this job, I tell you what. And then there is our main fork right there that holds your rocker arm. And it's got this little hook here too for a spring that actually puts tension on the whole assembly. Pretty neat. And as promised, there is the cylinder bore. You can see light rust, not too much pitting, I don't feel. Very light, if any. There's the piston. It doesn't look too terrible. It's a good carbon buildup. Hoping I can just get evaporust in this side, evaporust on the other side, and we'll do some damage and get this thing free. I don't know. It's really weird because on these old hit and miss engines, you've got a drip oiler to keep the main part of the machine good to go, known as the piston. And this thing's pretty neat. What it is, think of it kind of like a sediment bowl, except for oil. It's just a big tube that goes all the way down to the top of the cylinder here, right there. And you would adjust it up here, adjust a jet, and you turn it on and off, and that would drip a certain amount of oil per minute. And I was watching a video. A couple guys out there have some really good videos on how to restore these alone. And the whole thing comes apart. I mean, everything is screwed together. That's how simple it is. Like, there's your jet. Pretty rusty and crusty. But it just screws on in there like nothing. These pieces screw together. Your glass is just sitting there with some gaskets. This further screws apart from this, which further screws apart from this, which screws to the tube. And in fact, amazingly, but unsurprisingly, the tube going down through all the way to the cylinder is free. I was able to get it free via this nut right here. Just took a big old wrench and started turning. And I looked down in there and that tube is turning. But then again, it makes sense. You literally have oil dripping through here with a purpose to lubricate and prevent rust. That's what this thing is designed to do. So it's no wonder that it was free, because right where it's joined there'd be a lot of oil with the piston right there. So you never know. I restore this thing, maybe get some oil dripping down in there, get the evaporust on both sides. I bet we have a pretty good chance of getting this thing free. But I thought it was really cool that this thing is fully salvageable and repairable. The only problem is I got a big ass crack through the glass, which is really unfortunate. Might be able to buy a new one. If anybody knows, you know where to go. You know where to go. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to with this thing. It's going to take some time, but I believe that this thing can run again. I'm sure I'm not the only person that found a locked up hit and miss engine and got it running with relative ease. There's nothing to them, and everything's exposed and out here, and you can easily access it if it's free and rotates and doesn't have problems like this where one of the nuts that holds the connecting rod on is not reachable, really. But we'll get it. We'll get it. Until then, I'll keep you guys updated with some regular videos on this thing, on the progress, and we'll just see what we can do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment for more content, and Yamahsaki out. We'll see y'all later.